All right, common database technologies. This was a video request that came in. I know a lot of people are probably curious. We did the one on the common web technologies. Let's dive into the database side. I'm going to be covering what you need to know for OSCP, as well as some of the emerging technologies, things that are really good to know for on the job and things like that. So if that sounds interesting, definitely stay tuned. Hey guys, what's up? This is Ryan from elevatecyber. Let's start off with what you need to know for OSCP when it comes to the common database technologies, because it differs a little bit from what you see on the OSCP and what you're more likely to encounter on the job, like in the quote-unquote real world, I guess you could say. Well, the first thing that I want to explain is there's two different, I guess what you would say, implementations of databases, right? Like you have your relational databases and you have the non-relational databases. The relational databases is what you would call, like your SQL databases, right? The structured query language. Non-relational databases is, what you might hear a NoSQL database, right? So what are these? First of all, the purpose of a database is to, store data on a website that you can then retrieve later. It's basically what gives a website the functionality of a full-blown web application, right? Before the time of databases, early on in the evolution of the internet, we just had static web pages, right? There were just HTML files and things like that, and there weren't really any functionality. They most certainly weren't web applications as they are today. Well, that was before, databases were very commonly used and things like that. Now that we have them, we can store any data from the user or from external sites or whatever, and then we can then, retrieve that data later. It's really what gives these web pages the functionality that it's possible for them to have in the first place. So with that out of the way, when it comes to OSCP, you're pretty much just going to encounter your relational databases. And the reason it's called relational is it's structured in the sense that you basically have data that is indexed. It's all indexed, and there's your primary key, which is like the unique identifier for things on your table. And then those tables, there's multiple tables. They're linked together with foreign keys. And I'm not going to bore you too much with the very technical part that you probably don't really need to know for OSCP. Definitely go in and look at more information on this on SQL as you need to. But these are, your SQL databases, your relational databases, right? The tables relate to one another, basically, is what you need to know. Now, for the OSCP specifically, in terms of the technologies, you will often see MySQL probably the most frequently. And the reason I think for that is that it is like a free open source database. And so it's really easy to set that up on boxes for the creators of the boxes. So, and traditionally it's been used in like LAMP stack and things like that. So basically the TLDR is you will see that a lot on the OSCP is MySQL. And it's pretty simple to exploit. It has a lot of functionality that can do like pretty easily allow you to do file reads, code execution, stuff like that if you get SQL injection on that. And the second most common database technology that you'll encounter on OSCP is Microsoft SQL Server. So there's a number of Windows boxes on OSCP, and when they are running SQL, most likely that's where you're going to encounter these Microsoft SQL servers. And it's pretty much the same deal as MySQL. They just have a different syntax about doing stuff. So they all use SQL. They all use the server query language, but they just use different flavors, slightly different flavors, if you will, of SQL. So the syntax is going to look slightly different. And that's things that you can always look up specifically to figure out how you need to phrase something. Like when you're typing in, doing your payload, like, okay, this is a MySQL server. I need to formulate my payload this way using this built-in function or whatever. And, with MS SQL, it's going to be like a different syntax as well. So that's basically what you need to know. They're both pretty simple, straightforward to use, maybe require a little bit of Googling, but When it comes to some of the other common technologies that you probably won't run into on OSCP, but they're definitely very common and very beneficial to have a basic grasp on, that is Postgres would be another relational database, following that thread of the relational databases. Postgres SQL would be another one that that comes to mind. And Oracle in a very corporate environment, a very commercial environment, I will say. Oracle database is another one that's very common in the corporate world, but it is quite a little bit different syntactically, like the syntax of it and the implementation, even down to the implementation of how it actually works is quite a bit different from like a MySQL and some of the other ones you might be familiar with. So if they are running that in your corporate environment, it might be worth doing a little bit of research on that one for sure. But now going over to the non-relational databases, the NoSQL databases, as you may sometimes hear them. This is really good for when you have a ton of data, like big data. If you ever heard of big data, right? Just tons and tons of data, and you don't really need it to be structured in any particular way. This is going to allow you to really scale like data at massive scales. This is where you might want to consider using a non-relational database, or maybe you're on the pen testing side and they're using this technology. That's probably the kind of data that you're dealing with. A lot of times this is stored, it's stored in like JSON like documents. So if you're familiar with JSON, that's what it's pretty much going to look like. And the most common databases that use this are MongoDB, probably being number one. Redis as well, and Cassandra DB, I do believe as well. These are the most common ones that you'll see and encounter. And it's a lot like dealing with JSON, JavaScript notation, right? So that's pretty much what you need to know for that. And that's something that if they use that in your corporate environment, I would say go down the rabbit hole of learning it if you feel like that's something you encounter a lot. Otherwise, strictly for OSCP, I wouldn't really worry so much about those. So yeah, hopefully this video was of help to you guys. If it is, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button as well to help distill the myth of all these technologies, database technologies. Maybe you're a bit overwhelmed, or maybe you just need a little bit of guidance on what you need to prepare for your situation. Hopefully this video helped you do that. And yeah, if you are eager to learn more and you're pursuing maybe the OSCP or something, go ahead and check out the playlist right there on screen, what you need to know for OSCP. I'll see you guys right over in those videos, and thanks for watching.